Welcome to the Kearns podcast, where we talk all things real estate, business, and entrepreneurship. Today, I have a very dynamic woman, a superstar, Staci Gray. I met her actually at the Real Estate Guys conference in Belize. I actually think I had met her at another conference before, but my wife spotted her. She's like, this lady is super organized. She's super dynamic. And we sat down at her table and got to know her. And I was like, I need to have you on my podcast. We need to share some of this amazing information that you have. Staci, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Troy. I'm grateful that we got to meet in Belize and have that lunch table and everything. So many insights from there.
For sure. And Staci, talk to us about who you are, where you came from, and what you do right now.
Ooh, this is going to be a long story. Are we ready for that?
We're ready. We're ready.
And many people know me primarily because Russell Gray of the Real Estate Guys is my father. And my entrepreneurial journey started when I was 16 years old. So I actually graduated high school when I was 16, and my father did not want to send me off to college. He was like, you're too young and too pretty. You can't go to college, which is really strange because he also was very much about learning and studying, but he didn't want me to go at 16. So he said, come work with me for 2 years. And if you don't like it, you'll be 18 and you can go to college. So I was like, okay. Well, I started working with him. That's when he had first met Robert Helms. So we had a very successful real estate education system, mortgage company, real estate brokerage. I mean, just all the businesses to help people get into real estate investing. I bought my first property when I was 18. Then I went and bought a doodad, which I hadn't played the cash flow board game yet. So once I played it, I realized I should not have bought the doodad. But I started just making so much money investing in real estate and running businesses that I actually didn't go to college. And since then, I've started multiple businesses, invested, generated that passive income and cash flow and financial freedom that we all aspire for. And now I'm actually helping people do the same thing inside of their businesses, because most people go out to start a business because they want freedom, or we invest in real estate because we want freedom. But without infrastructure and systems and processes, we ended up trapped in them. So my dream is to help everybody really start things to create real freedom.
Talk about your mission statement. I know you mentioned that to me once before. What is your mission statement?
Yeah, so it's to help mission-driven leaders build businesses they own that don't own them.
And the name of the business is, in the background, Organized to Scale, right? And I think that's really paramount. So I wanted to take a step backwards. Your father is a really dynamic guy. Everybody who's been to a Real Estate Guys podcast, listened to a Real Estate Guys podcast, been to a Real Estate Guys event, knows that your dad is a dynamic guy. I mean, the guy's ripped, number one. I just saw him at the beach. I'm like, dude, I don't know. He's like, I don't know how old your dad is, but I'm sure he's in his late 50s or early 60s. I don't know, but he looks like he's 24 years old. I literally saw him at the beach. I'm like, bro, that's like a lethal weapon you're walking around with right there. And I'm not into guys, but I'm like, I do notice when somebody's put the hard work in, and he definitely has put the hard work in. Yeah. I want to take a step back and say, like, when you first started with your dad, how this business conceptualized was you had to help them out.
Yes. So he had this idea of starting a mentoring program, which you have, which is amazing. And it was really to teach people financial education. This was before we had even met Robert and Kim Kiyosaki, before we really had gotten into it. He was passionate. His father came over from the Philippines and actually took a company public, and then had a lot of challenges with paper assets and kind of what we consider some of the corruption in Wall Street. So we are really about helping Main Street. So he was super passionate about that. And he had all of these, he's a visionary. So he's a visionary leader, and visionary leaders are great starters. Sometimes they're not the best finishers, but they're really great starters. They ideate, they have all these ideas that they want to do, but then when it comes down to where the rubber meets the road and it's the execution time, they'll half start it, but not finish it. What my role was in that business was actually to be the finisher. So I started, and I think I shared this story with you, I started just answering the phones. And I was making $10 an hour, answering the phones, taking registrations for the event, sending out email confirmations. I'm 16 years old. I mean, I was making more money babysitting when I was 11 than when I started working with him. He He told me, he said, this is part of your education, you're learning. I didn't know I was slave labor, but I learned a lot.
It worked out.
It did. He said to me that if I didn't want to answer the phones, that was fine. I could hire and train my replacement as long as I documented it. So what I started doing was documenting everything that I did. Like if somebody calls, this is the script, this is how you answer it. This is the template email confirmation that you send. This is how you process a credit card payment. This is how you throw an event. And I just kept doing that until we had probably 15 people that were reporting to me that I was working with. And again, I'm at this point probably 18 years old, 19 years old, so young.
And for those of you watching us right now, she doesn't look much older than that right now. Like I have zero idea of how young you are. I don't know anything about that.
Let's say this was 20 years ago. So
right.
The genetics that my father has, I guess I have too.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. So I started doing that and ended up becoming the president of the Real Estate Guys, which I still am to this day. But
oh, wow.
The story of actually how Organized to Scale started was I was very successful in running the Real Estate Guys. And the Real Estate Guys is kind of the public brand that we all see, but we have several other companies behind the scenes that we operate. And then my mother, my dad's wife, got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer.
Right.
And at that point, I had actually exited the company and I had launched a rental company and some other companies. But when she got sick, he asked me if I would come run the company again for him, because when I ran it, it was so streamlined and organized. And so I said, yes, but I want to build the team again because I don't want to be trapped in the day-to-day operations and not have time with my mom as well. Right. So I came back in, put all of this infrastructure, processes, procedures, built what we call squads. We call our team squads. Built a squad. They ran all the day-to-day operations, and it actually increased revenue, was more stable. And my father and I were both there when my mother took her last breath. We were there holding her hand. I spent the last 18 months of my mom's life with her.
Right.
And given the clientele of my father's businesses, they're all real estate investors, capital raisers, small business owners. They all saw the growth of his company during one of the most challenging times in our family, and was like, who did this? Who can help us do this? And that is how Organized to Scale came. So people just started saying, will you help me? Will you help me? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I know how to clone myself to do this for you, but let's give it a go. Let me see if I can work with multiple visionaries and build out an infrastructure and processes and procedures for supporting multiple visionaries. And it turned out that I can. And so that's kind of how the story evolved. And I still have a weekly one-on-one call with Russ to go over kind of the direction of the Real Estate Guys and all of the family brands that we have. But as far as the day-to-day execution goes, I'm not involved in it anymore. We have an amazing team that handles all of that now.
I think thanks for sharing that, Staci. I think that's such an important point, and that's why I was really attracted to sitting at your table. My wife's like, this is who we need. And for those of you guys who are familiar with books like Traction, or I think you dropped, I'm going to ask you again, you dropped a bunch of books on me at the dinner table. I was recording that whole conversation, but just for ease, what were some of those books that really helped you get organized that you mentioned at the lunch table there?
Yeah, so I can share that story as well, but there are 6 books that are the foundation of Organized to Scale. And Scaling Up by Vern Harnish is one of them. Traction by Gino Wickman. Speed of Trust by Stephen Covey. So it's all about culture, creating culture within your organization. Right. Email by Michael Gerber. Okay. Measure What Matters. I don't know who it's by, but it's about OKRs, objectives and key results. So tracking metrics and so forth. And then another book that has been kind of a big impact from a cash flow perspective. So a lot of entrepreneurs get into businesses, yet they only seek for the revenue generating side of it, but they don't always manage the cash flow. And you really have to manage cash flow in business, just like you manage cash flow in real estate.
Right.
And so Profit First is by Mike Michalowicz. And that's another book that is the framework of how we organize businesses. So I think I got them all, 6.
Staci, you're wicked smart. And the crazy part is you didn't go to college. And so people who think that like to be smart, you got to go to college. I mean, and the work ethic, I did a little bit of research before we talked to kind of get to know who you are as a person, just from looking at your Instagram and doing a little bit of social media stalking. And I was like, whoa, you're a competitive like athlete too, right? Can we talk a little bit about that and that whole journey?
I'm not a competitive athlete. I played a lot of sports though. So I guess this is a story about my personality. When I was a kid, the doctor said I had ADD, and my parents refused to put me on medication. But I was a very high energy and very, I'll say, stubborn self. I wanted to think for myself. My very first word was myself. It wasn't mom. It wasn't dad. It was myself. So yes, I was very fiercely independent. Like, don't tell me what to do. So I had all this energy, but they didn't want to put me on any medication or anything. So they ended up putting me in a gazillion sports. So I played club soccer, I did diving, I did swimming, I did dance. I just did everything that they could do. And I think it was just to tire me out. So at the end of the day, they didn't have to deal with me.
Right. Yeah, I understand that. I got twins. I know that. That's a good program. I like that. So did you ever get like really competitive at any of those sports, or did you just continue to play those throughout your whole life?
I just played it until actually when I was 16, I stopped because that's when I started working, and I didn't end up going and doing anything more. But part of my therapy or my just mental clarity is working out. I love to work out.
So you still are very active working out and so that's a great kind of segue. What is your routine for somebody who's, I'm sure, very focused and driven? What does your daily routine look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm very particular about my morning routine and my evening routine. Sometimes I can't always control what happens in the middle of the day, but if I can do my morning right and I can do my evening right, I can navigate the rest of whatever comes at me in the middle of the day. So my morning routine is I wake up, I do not look at my phone. So it's on do not disturb before I go to bed, and I don't look at it until after I have my quiet time. And for me, my quiet time is I journal, I read, and I meditate.
Can you walk me through what the meditation part looks like? Because that's something like I'm trying to get on the journaling. I understand that that's a huge way to be successful. I do a lot of yoga, but I don't even know how to meditate. If I was like, people are saying it's like a minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes or 4 minutes. I don't know. Tell me you do it all the time. What's it like?
So, when I first started meditating, I had that same, like, how do I even do this? And my brain is still thinking. And so I'm on these rabbit trails. Am I even doing it right? One of the things that I have found that works for me is to do breath work before I meditate. So breath work puts me into my body, which is kind of the essence of meditation, is to just quiet the mind for me. And I'm no expert in meditation at all, but I have an app that I use that I can just put on a 5-minute meditation or a 10-minute meditation. And then I can just—
Is it Calm?
No, I didn't particularly like that one, but I like Insight Timer. Insight Timer is the one I use.
Okay.
But I've heard people use Calm. I didn't find as many guides in that one that I liked as much as Insight Timer. So I use Insight Timer, and I just, sometimes if I'm in a rush, I'll just choose like, hey, 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever I can do. And I just play and drop into that meditation. And if I do breath work before I do it, I'm able to actually be present with the meditation, versus when I don't do breath work, sometimes my mind wanders a little bit more.
So what's the whole focus of meditation? I'm asking this like I've never Googled it. I've never done anything other than I do yoga, and I thought I was meditating that way because, like you said, you're doing breath work, you're trying to get focused, but meditation, you're trying not to think, right? That's the whole goal.
I'm no meditation expert, but for me, the reason why I do it is I feel like when I don't, I'm reacting to the priorities of the external.
Right.
Where when I do the meditation, I am going into the essence of who I am, like my heart, my soul, my mission, and
Right.
I'm connecting with that in an aligned way so that then my behavior during the day is more aligned from the core of who I am versus reacting to the external. And when you're running many businesses and having a lot of demands on your time, it's very easy to prioritize the external versus
Right.
to prioritize the internal. And a lot of people sacrifice their peace in the process of achieving wealth or building a business or investing in real estate or building a team or servicing their friends or family or social activities, and they lose the alignment for themselves. So this is, for me, why I see a lot of people experience a lot of wealth, but then they're actually not even happy with what
Right.
they achieved. And I don't want to lose that. I don't want to pursue all of this external success and then lose the essence of who I am in the process. So for me, that's why I meditate.
So it sounds like it's just kind of you setting the day. Like some people do it through prayer or whatever, but you're just kind of setting the tone for what's going to happen for the rest of the day so that you don't let the fires of all your businesses, the people's needs change where your trajectory is going.
Mm-hmm. I think it aligns me too with my values a bit more than otherwise. So yeah, I do that and journaling and then working out. So my goal is always first thing in the morning to work out. It gives me the energy for everything else that happens in the day.
So what's a typical workout? Are you like a runner? Are you like do you do classes? Are you self-motivated? Well, we know you're self-motivated, but the working out's different for everybody, right?
I used to do these high intensity workouts every day, like where you wear the heart rate monitor and you see that you burn 900 calories. I used to be that. And then I got a sciatica really bad.
Oh,
And
yes.
it was really painful. And then also with my mother's health, we learned a lot about what is actually healthy and what the body needs. And I do love high intensity workouts for sure. I've actually started training with a trainer who does functional patterns. Have you heard of that?
I have not. Please expand.
So again, I don't know that much about it. And when I first started working out with him, I used to say it was pretend workouts because I felt like I did nothing. It was primarily breath work and then these isometric movements. But then my sciatica went away. My alignment was better. My skeletal structure was stronger. And so I do that. And then I do a lot of hiking and a lot of just stretching, MFR, all of that. So and swimming sometimes, but I'm not as intense as I used to be. I used to be extremely intense.
That's crazy. I've had issues with myself as well in terms of the sciatica nerve and had like long-term arm pain. I went everywhere to get it. And I'm like, man, I'm doing all the right stuff. I'm working out. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. Then you realize it's just this pent up stress probably that like is going to take someone to work it. For me, I went to like the chiropractor. I went to the acupuncturist. I went to the doctor. And finally what fixed me was going to a Thai massage place. And this lady working on me for 2 sessions at 90 minutes a session. And literally all of my pain disappeared that pills couldn't take away, that all these other theories couldn't take away. And it's debilitating, as you probably know, like when you have that pain, it's constant. So I like where you're going with that. I'm a big fan of the same type of thing. Your workout should almost be like therapy, and it should set the tone for the day. And for me, I have to do it like the first part of the day. Otherwise, it's trying to get it in, right?
And if I don't do it in the morning, then I'm stressing out the whole day, then I'm not going to get to it. And so like taking up mental capacity for me. So for me, it's first thing in the morning. And
awesome. What time do you wake up?
Depends. So I am very committed to 8 hours of sleep. So I actually prioritize sleep. So on my best days, well, my goal is to like I turn off my evening routine, turning off the phone, no TV, all of that. And I read before I go to bed. So it's no lights or unnatural stimulation so that I can just really go to sleep well. And so my goal is usually between 9:30 and 10 to go to bed so I can wake up by 5:36. That's what I enjoy doing.
Right.
But if, like we were on the summit and we were out very, very late, sometimes those schedules get a little bit off, but that's my ideal. And that's actually something I had to reconcile. I joke I'm a recovering perfectionist. So I'm very particular about my schedule, my routines, how things are supposed to be done, kind of a little bit OCD, all like the priorities I have have to be all I's dotted, T's crossed. And having grace with myself that it didn't all have to be perfect and every day didn't have to be exactly, because it took the creativity and the innovation out of it. If every day it was like, you wake up at 5 o'clock, you eat this, you do this, it was almost became like a robot in my own life. And instead of it actually letting it be what it's going to be and leaning into more of my intuition and what my body or spirit maybe is being drawn towards, and exploring that with curiosity versus being so rigid that I blocked any opportunity for creativity or innovation. So that's been something I personally had to work on because I used to be massively rigid.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, Staci. It's just like being open to the fact that like not every day is perfect, not every meeting's perfect, not every morning's perfect. But if you set it the tone to say, you know what, if I get 5 out of 7 days right, and if I get this right, then you're not so like, because I read a book called Soundtrack, and it's all about that whatever's playing in your mind, right? And your mind was programmed to be a perfectionist. And so like so rigid and so like intense and so like matter of fact, but then you realize that there's like something that goes back with that, which is like, you're not able to be as creative and you're not able to be as on the fly and your juices. So where you're at now is you've got this great business, which obviously we're setting up a consultation with you, and there's many other people who might want to do that. Can you talk to us about what Organized to Scale really does for entrepreneurs and their business? I know you highlighted it a little bit, but can we get a little bit more in depth about it?
Yeah. So a lot of people who start business are what I call visionary leaders. They have this idea of what they want to create, and they see a problem in the marketplace that they think they're uniquely equipped to solve. That's usually why people start a business. That paired with obviously the financial rewards of doing that. Right. And they do it because typically they had a day job or a W-2, and they don't want to be in their W-2. And they could be very successful. One of the visionaries that we work with day to day at Organized to Scale is the CFO of $1 billion publicly traded company. And he has a side business where he invests in real estate and syndicates and raises capital and all of that. And so you don't have to not like your day job, or you don't have to not be successful in your corporate career to want to do something different. So these people, they typically have experienced some type of tax problems. They have this dream of starting this business, and they also don't want to get into another situation where they're trading time for dollars.
Right.
And
so important.
Yes, so they're looking for who can I align with where I can stay in the visionary role and I don't get sucked into all of the weeds of the day-to-day tasks and the day-to-day operations and that hamster wheel of execution. And so what we do at Organized to Scale is we pair up with those visionary leaders to help them just live in the visionary seat. And the visionary seat is the person who can see kind of that front of the puzzle box. They can see it in color, they can see it in 3D, they know everything when it's finished, what it looks like, and they're so passionate about achieving it. Yet when that box gets opened and there's puzzle pieces everywhere, they lose interest. So they're like, I don't want to have to put the puzzle pieces together. There's too many pieces. Somebody else figure it out. We are the somebody else figure it out team. So we help them clarify and crystallize their vision. So sometimes visionaries are clear in their head, but they're not always the clearest at communicating the vision. So we work.
Sorry to interrupt you. I think that's really where you nailed me. And you're like, when we sat down or we were talking at the water cooler, I think it was, and you're like, yeah, you're clear in your head, but nobody else knows what the hell is going on. I think that point I really want to, because if I'm not the only one that suffers from that, I'm sure other people do too.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I think visionaries and the people who support visionaries don't all realize is every waking hour, a visionary is thinking about their business. They're thinking about it in the shower. They're thinking about it when they're driving. They're thinking about it when they're sleeping. They wake up with an aha idea. They're crystallizing it every single waking and sleeping hour. A lot of people dream about it. They have ideas when they wake up. And it's all coming together in your head, and you're actually holding that picture together in your brain. It's not written anywhere. You don't actually have the front of that puzzle box. You're just holding it all together in your brain. It could be also why sometimes visionaries, their wives or their spouses will say, you're looking at me, but are you listening to me? And you're like, because in your head, you're still like holding all of these pieces together. So you're there, but you're not there.
Right.
And so what we do is like help you clarify that. And the people who support you, they are getting bits and pieces to the ability that you're able to articulate it. And they're trying to piece it together in the ways that they get it from you. But sometimes when they try to ask clarifying questions, visionaries unintentionally get annoyed, like, wait, you're not hearing me. This is what I said. And it's not that their visionary is really particularly annoyed with the person asking the clarifying question. It's that they think they're clear and they think what they're saying is super clear. And the person who's asking the question is like, I don't understand. And it's that wrestling that needs to happen, which is actually a really healthy conversation. But visionaries get frustrated and people get frustrated who are supporting them because they just don't click. And the more the visionary can practice communicating it, and the more the people supporting them can be like, yes, I get it. Is this what you wanted? And them having all of those little stacks of wins saying, yes, you got it. Yes, you got it. Eventually that puzzle begins to get put together. And it's a process. So the way we build businesses, having built several, is in 3 phases. 1, we architect it. 2, we build it. And 3, we operate it. What happens is most people don't architect or build. They just try to start operating. That's like, oh, I'm going to do social media. Oh, I need a website. Oh, I want to raise capital. Oh, that deal looks good. I'm going to do an LOI. That's what people live in. What happens is that starts creating a lot of activity, but there's no foundation or infrastructure. And so it can implode on itself.
Right.
So what we do is we architect. We say, okay, in 10 years, if we have the perfect business, what does that look like? You as a visionary, what's your sweet spot? Where do you want to live? Do you want to be the brand ambassador, the sales rep, the podcaster? Do you want to be the one hunting for the deals? What does it look like for you? Right. And then once we get clear on that, then we say, okay, who are you going to serve? What problem are you solving? And how are we going to put those together into a business and processes and workflow to actually make it happen? And then we blueprint that whole thing. So what's your vision, mission, values? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? What's everything that needs to be done in order to achieve it? What are the core functions and quote unquote assembly lines that are going to make that happen? And what are the metrics for success? So if we know if we're on track or not. And that is all in just the architect part of it.
Wow, that is awesome.
And then we go build it. So then we say, okay, we need a CRM, we need a database, we need an investor portal, we need a website, we need a logo, we need social media, but it's all on brand and in alignment with what the end goal is. And the team that builds it isn't necessarily the team that operates it. So some people are really good at building, but they're not good at pulling the levers. And some people are really good at pulling the levers, but not good at building. So that's 2 separate teams. So the team gets it built, and then the tactical team, they can just follow standard operating procedures, plug and play, do the day-to-day execution. And then every 90 days, we work on the business and we say, what's working, what's not, what are our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and also trends. And then what are we going to get done in the next 90 days? And then we actually operate in 90-day cycles and then reassess, okay, are we on track with the blueprint? Is everything functioning the way it needs to be functioning? Is the visionary staying in their lane? Is the integrator and tactical team staying in their lane? What's missing? And then we just keep iterating. Scaling a business is a constant iteration.
Right. It's just like turning a battleship. You don't just freaking whip the wheel around and then, do that. You're basically tweaking it, making sure it's right, then moving a step forward and tweaking it again, moving a step forward. So if somebody was interested in getting like something from you in terms of getting like assistance with your business, what would they do?
Yeah, well, I actually have a free report that could be helpful just to get a little bit more insight. It's 4 tips for quickly organizing your business to scale. And they can send an email to scale@organizedtoscale.com. That's scale@organizedtoscale.com. And in there, it kind of walks through what I just shared in a self-taught way. So how to get clear as a visionary, what processes you need, what people you need, and how to take your first actions towards getting your business launched or even getting your business more organized.
Right.
Of course, they can go to the website organizedtoscale.com or find me on social media too.
That's great. And while we're there, what are your handles? How do people who are inspired by a young, dynamic woman like yourself, who's in a very competitive business running, and I didn't even know this before we had this interview right now, that you were the president of the company. I do know that like every time I've ever been in that room and people are like, the person who has got all the answers, her name is Staci and she's over there. Like that's the way you've always been portrayed to me, but you never, are bougie or have some sort of a title. You're always very approachable and you're always very matter of fact, which I appreciate, and straight to the point with, and you understand how to do that. So it's just crazy. I didn't even know you were the president. Like, so you're running all these companies on top of that?
Yeah. Well, it's actually funny. Maybe because I grew up in this business world, my grandfather was an entrepreneur, my father's an entrepreneur. I got into building businesses when I was 16 years old. And also Russ teaches that sales training, and he's an incredibly great salesperson. A lot of it, I think, is just osmosis, like it's just in my DNA to do. So I don't think of it as anything super unique or a superpower. I just think this is what we do. We build businesses. But the more I'm helping people, other visionary leaders outside of my tight-knit group, I'm realizing how unique it really is and how helpful it can be for people to really launch their businesses and create something that they've wanted to their whole lives and have struggled to actually do. And so
right. Keep going. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, I don't.
So I was just going to say, and even for people that haven't started a business and they have, what by my intents and purposes, a successful business, but that there's flaws and there's potholes, and that like you could be a lot better if you had more systems, more standard operating procedures, more and I'd be interested to know how do you set up your standard operating procedures? Do you do personality tests for people like that? Is that something that you believe in? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so we're exploring predictive index right now to maybe integrate that, but we've primarily been using the DISC profile. So one of my best friends is a former Tony Robbins coach, and she used to coach with him for 6 years. And so I had a lot of insights on the DISC profile. So we were using that because I could just call her and say, hey, what about this? What about this? And right. which has been super helpful. So we use that. It helps us identify also who's going to be a great visionary versus who maybe is going to be a more challenging visionary. And by that, I don't mean that certain people can't be a visionary and vice versa. We're just naturally wired certain ways. And right. In watching a lot of visionaries build businesses and some attempt to build businesses, the sooner you can get to know yourself and know your strengths and weaknesses and be okay with that, and then go partner and align yourself with people who complement your weaknesses, the faster you're going to go.
And you're saying that, and you guys, your dad's partnered with Robert Helms, and they have a great partnership. How long have they been at it?
Over 20 years. So,
And they flow great. Each person knows their role, and nobody tries to overshadow one or the other. There's no like, and that's, I always say, partnerships go bad when you have trust or one person's envious or jealous of the other person. And these guys have been rocking. I mean, if you guys have not been to a Real Estate Guys event, they're always full of knowledge. They're always full of fun. And I really feel like the reason I continue to keep going to them is because I feel like they put the work in and they try to provide value. Like a lot of times when you go to like these, I've been to hundreds of events, I'm sure you can imagine. And, there's only a few that you go back to. And the Real Estate Guys is one that I'll continue to go back to because I always feel like, your dad, Russell, and Robert always try to give everything, right? No matter what happens, no matter what the situation is, that they're giving you everything that they have. I mean, they've had, I think the one I was in Dallas, they had, what's his name's brother from that sports figure. I can't remember the guy's name. Gronkowski.
Yes.
Gronkowski.
Yep.
And they brought Kim Kiyosaki, Robert Kiyosaki's wife, on for the event we were just at. And the fact that you're the president of the company, first of all, before I forget to do that, what are your socials for people who are listening right now that want to follow your journey, that are interested in organizing their business to scale it? How do they get a hold of you besides the email address?
Everything for Organized to Scale is at Organized to Scale. And then Staci Gray is actually STACI GRAY. And on Instagram, it's Staci_Gray. Everywhere else, it's at Staci Gray.
Awesome. So what would be your perfect client if somebody's trying to figure out if they're a good fit for you? What would be the perfect client for you guys, or somebody you feel like you could really make a change in their business?
The people we love supporting the most are the people who are incredibly talented salespeople that they knew if they had the right support on the back end, they could just be off to the races, put their foot on the gas pedal and go. That is the best person.
All right. We definitely, I need to get back to my wife and tell her to schedule whatever we're supposed to be doing, because that's where I'm at right now. I really feel like where we're at with the mentorship program, where we're at with the social media, like my highest and best use is sales. And I'm always the same way. If I can have the people to help me behind me, so I could just create my mess and keep going, then I'm not going to slow down. But once I got to slow down and take care of the details, then so I totally identify with what you're saying.
It's very hard to sit in both seats. It's very hard to be the visionary and the integrator or COO. It's hard. It takes two different sides of your brain. It's challenging to sit in both. The second we accept that we cannot sit in both and we choose one, and we get somebody in to sit in the other one, the faster our companies scale.
That's awesome. So what words of wisdom would you drop on people who are young right now, or who are old, and who are listening to you, in terms of your journey of 20 years of not only being like a super successful entrepreneur, businesswoman, real estate investor, all those things, but somebody who's very disciplined, very focused, very hardworking? What nuggets would you tell people that if they're trying to make a change? And a lot of these people are still working 9 to 5 who listen to this podcast, and they're still like, they're pissed at their current situation, whether it's in life or whether it's they don't feel like they're getting what they deserve. What things would you tell them?
Yeah, I think I have a couple. One is something Ken McElroy told me, who's a great friend and mentor of mine, and it's the power of association. So the number one thing you can do to change your life is change who you hang around. So Jim Rohn says you're the sum total of the 5 people you hang around and spend the most time with. So if you have people that are broke, living paycheck to paycheck, and you're spending every night a happy hour with them, you're going to be more like them. If you have friends that go to more football games than they go to concerts, you're going to go to more football games than concerts. So the quicker you can change who you hang around and get connected, this is true online and offline. So who you follow, what you engage with online, that completely impacts your psychology and your confidence. And so my second part of that is, in order for us to achieve any level of success, you have to protect your confidence. Confident people take action. And when you can stack wins, you create momentum. If you can't stack wins because you're not confident, you don't create momentum. And then that kind of stifles all progress, innovation, and it slows you down. And the way to protect your confidence, and this probably goes back to why I'm so disciplined, is you keep your promises to yourself. So if you say you're going to wake up at a certain time, wake up at that time. If you say you're going to floss your teeth, floss your teeth. If you say you're not going to drink that day, don't drink that day. If you're going to work out, work out. If you say you're going to make that phone call, make the phone call. And it doesn't have to be huge things. It's just the quicker you can protect or grow and protect your confidence, the more you do that over time, you're going to feel like you can do anything. And what you want in any situation is the ability to walk into a room and saying, no matter what happens, I trust myself to solve it. And that comes from being confident.
That's amazing stuff right there, guys. If you guys didn't hear that, rewind it, press play, and give us a 5-star review, because that is a gem right there. I think I always tell people something similar when they're starting in real estate investing. I'm like, you got to build your confidence. A lot of these guys, I'm like, well, what's your goal? They're like, I want to make I want to own $2.5 million of property. I'm like, well, what if it doesn't make any money? Like, what if it costs you money to own that? Is that really your goal? And then I'm like, you just really need to start with base hits, like in sports or athletics. They don't start somebody on the PGA Tour who's never picked up a golf club. And there's a reason for that. You have to build your confidence, because, and this goes on and on again, Tiger Woods, anybody who's on the major tour, if they have a mental lapse, their physical game is still there, but it's gone because they're mentally disconnected. And I think I just learned a lot from you, Staci, when you just said, like, whoever you follow or whoever you're like, because I'm like, I don't associate with any bums anymore. I have done that in the past before, but maybe I follow some bums. Maybe I follow some of that nonsense. And I think I'm going to change that behavior moving forward, just because I always tell people, you are who you associate with it. And if you're, I used to drink. I don't drink anymore. I've been drinking since 2007. But when I used to drink in 2007, all my friends were drunks. And, it's because it's who you choose to hang out with. And for people who are like, well, I'd have to get new friends, the answer is 100% yes. And those new friends will probably like to see you succeed. And I think that also goes into something I wanted to ask your opinion about. I think a lot of times people that are around you, that have been around you a long time, are either secretly jealous of you or don't like you. And they just kind of hide out, and we don't know why they're there. But the sooner that you can find out that you're in the room with the right people who want you to succeed, which is why we go to all these events, to be around like-minded people. And we talk about how important the networking is. Like, that's so crucial. I've read a lot of human psychology books and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, there are actually people who want you to fail that are hanging out right in your corner that you don't even know about.
Yeah, that's funny. If I ever went to college, I wanted to go for psychology. I love studying what drives humans to do what they do. But we actually, before this, we're talking about what it was like for me being a female in a male dominated industry, being right. Younger, all of that. I was really intentional, and I don't know where this came from. It maybe could have come from my father. I'm not sure, but I was really intentional not to create a crutch that I didn't have. So I would, unless somebody's going to kick me out of a conference room or say I didn't belong somewhere, I was going to act as if I belonged. And right. I studied so much to have something valuable to say. I read, I listen to podcasts, I ask questions, not afraid to look dumb, I'll just ask. And I kept doing that so I didn't have to feel like I didn't deserve to be anywhere. I just assumed that if I was invited, even if I wasn't, I had a right to be there, and I was going to add as much value as I could. And the more I did that, the more I was invited back. And I put more the emphasis on maybe internal versus whether or not the person next to me was rooting for me or not. It was how if I could root for myself at such a higher pace than anyone was not rooting for me, then I would just outpace them.
Yeah, that's such an important statement that you just made, Staci. Can you elaborate a little bit about, like, when because a lot of times we feel like we don't belong, right? Like, I'm walking into this room, or I'm going, or they ask me, even for me, like, as I look at myself and my career, and I'm like, oh man, they're going to be asking me to speak on stuff, and I don't want to do that. I like, that's like scary stuff. They say the number one habit is public speaking. And I would probably say, you know what, I don't want to do that stuff. Not because I just don't want to do it, right? It's just like, it's something that's an awkward position to put yourself in, but you have to do stuff that you're uncomfortable with in order to be successful. And I think that's what you just hit on there, is saying that, like, even when you felt like you didn't belong, unless someone told you, maybe they thought it, maybe you thought it, but you didn't leave.
Right. Yeah. And I prepared, I studied so hard for so many things. I was asked when I organized to scale, I've always been behind the scenes. I've never been the one on stage doing podcasts. My whole role was behind the scenes. So getting into organized to scale and having more of a public persona, the first presentation I was asked to do, I was terrified. I did not want to do public speaking. So I actually went and spent $1,500, took a public speaking course for the weekend before I had to go do this presentation, because I wanted to make sure that when I got on stage, I at minimum could add value and not stutter or not have something, my mouth open and not anything come out of my mouth. And I just prepared. So we have a lot of drive in us. And sometimes if we could allocate all of that energy that we put towards doubting ourselves to actually preparing ourselves, I think we would be less insecure.
Yeah, repeat that, please. That's a very profound statement. Can you please repeat that?
We put in as much energy preparing ourselves, put more energy into preparing ourselves than doubting ourselves, then we're going to be less insecure and be making more progress. I don't even know if I said it right, because I hadn't said that phrase before.
Well, yeah, I think it just hit me pretty good. It's like, if you spend your time preparing versus doubting yourself, then you're taking charge of things versus just planning things to fail, right? And everybody does that in some way or another. Like, oh, this is going to go wrong. Like, I'm always hyper nervous when I'm doing a podcast, because we've had internet issues here, and I'm like, God, please don't let me have Staci Gray on, have her drop all these bombs, and then I'm like, you know what I mean? It's buffering in and out. I'm apologizing, and then it just like, that's how the guest remembered me. And I think it's so important that, like, just to, somebody's told me this on another podcast that I was on a long time ago, really good friend of mine, Josh Galindo. If you guys haven't checked out that podcast, make sure you do. But he says, where your focus goes, grows. And that really stuck with me, just like what you just told me right now. And I really appreciate you sharing that with our audience too. And if you guys are listening to Staci and you're not following her on her socials, I mean, this is a young woman who is basically like the general. Like, if you look at the US military, she's like second in command to the president of the United States in her world, right? Not saying that that's who you are in reality, but the Real Estate Guys has a huge following. I don't know how many downloads you had. I think Robert Helms told me at one point in time it's like millions, 15 million downloads or something like that. But a lot of people, they were like the first guys to start a podcast, talk about real estate. That's who they are. I mean, they inspired me to start a podcast. I don't think I would be here if the Real Estate Guys didn't come first. And they're inspiring guys, and they still are actively investing. They built their own resort in Belize. They're doing tons of cool stuff. And they put you as a 16-year-old woman, not college educated, in charge of their business for the last however many years. Mm-hmm. Pretty powerful stuff. So what other things would you, I guess, to wrap it up here, what other nuggets could you drop on, if you're a woman in business right now and you don't have the confidence because you're spending a lot of time doubting yourself, what would you say that could change their mind, and what kind of things should they feed their brain with?
Yeah, and I really don't think it matters if you're male or female. I think that the principles work regardless. If you're in a situation where you want to have the courage to pursue something, whether it's to do your first investment, start a business, raise capital, make a phone call that you're scared to make, anything that you want to do, I think the solution always is action. Action solves a lot. And if you're not wired to take action, and it doesn't have to be huge action, it can be, okay, today I'm going to read one page of this book. Today I'm going to DM this person who is influential to me and could maybe have an impact on my life. For me, when I was starting Organized to Scale, I have built Organized to Scale bigger than I have built the Real Estate Guys. So
Wow.
the number of team members I have at Organized to Scale is more than I ever had at the Real Estate Guys. So I was in a position where I need to be trained as a CEO. How do I be a CEO of a bigger company than I had ever been a CEO of? And
Right.
I just picked up I made one phone call. And yes, I have a network, but I made one phone call. And I said, what do you think I should do? And he said, I'll be in Austin on Thursday. I'll spend the whole day with you. He flew in on his private jet, spent the whole day with me, and he got me plugged in to the CEO community that has completely transformed my community, my CEO community. And yes, I have done a lot to be able to make that one phone call, but it started with me working, answering phones. So you never know what little thing that you can do that can just get you in position. I think so many times we want to be at Z when we're at A. And so I think for anybody who is having that doubt or insecurity, you're not going to be at Z, you're going to be at A, and A is okay. You don't have to compare where you're starting at to somebody else's end. And I think so many times people don't even start because of the comparison game.
Right, for sure, 100%. Don't compare yourself to others. And I think that the other key point that you hit on there is, and I learned this the hard way, is it's not what you know, it's who you know. And having that right phone call or having that person that can help solve that problem or knows the answer to that question is so important to just speeding up time, right? Like if time is our currency, because it really is, everybody's talking about crypto, everybody's talking about like the dollar, they're talking about this currency, that currency. Time is the currency that we all have the least amount of, that we all should want the most out of, that we're all trying to earn the money so that we can buy back our time. And I think it's just important that you said that.
Yes, and I think I'll take it one step further. I think
Please.
energy is the thing that we need more than time, because we all have 24 hours. But if we don't manage our psychology and our energy, then our ability to show up to that 10 minutes is going to be different. If I showed up to this call, but I was drained and I didn't have the mental clarity, then the value I would bring to this time that I had with you would be less than if I made sure I ate right and exercised and drank water and talked to people that spoke positivity into my life and surrounded myself with positive energy. How I'm showing up in that hour is going to be different. And so making sure that we're protecting our energy, and that goes back to protecting our confidence, that goes back to keeping our promises to ourselves, which is also all about changing who you hang around and joining communities like your mentoring program and tribes of people that are influencing you to be the best version of yourself, and also are in stride right beside you doing the exact same thing, because that's inspiring.
Right. And you're inspiring. And I appreciate you sharing your time with us, because I know everybody's got 24 hours in the days, but some people's cost a lot more. And Staci is one of those people who's, she's really built a big business. And if you're interested in, learning more about the Real Estate Guys, obviously, everything about them. If you're more interested in Organized to Scale, you want to drop that email again real quick for them?
Sure. Yes. You can send an email to scale@organizedtoscale.com.
Perfect. Guys, if there's any last nuggets you want to drop, if not, I'm going to wrap things up. I really appreciate you spending your time with us. Where are you calling us from today, by the way?
I'm in Austin, Texas.
And that's where you reside?
It's where I reside when I'm not on an airplane.
All right. Well, I totally appreciate you spending the time today with us. Guys, make sure you give us a 5-star review. Make sure you share this podcast. Make sure you subscribe, and make sure that you put yourself, who you follow, as you heard from Staci's mouth, is important. So follow her on Instagram, follow her on all of her socials, get to know her. She's a dynamic person. Like, I seek out dynamic people. I seek out dynamic people, and me and my wife zeroed in on you. We're like, okay, the girl in yellow, I think it was the first day you had the lunch, the girl in yellow, we need to go, and like, tables full. We're number 142, and like, tables full. And then I think she actually had something come up that day, but I actually got to spend the whole lunch with you. It was a dynamically filled lunch that led to this podcast that hopefully leads to us working together so you can help me organize and scale my mentoring program, my other businesses and stuff like that. I really, really appreciate you spending the time here, Staci.
Thank you. I enjoyed getting to know you and your wife, and I love the opportunity and where this could go.
All right. Appreciate it, guys. Peace.